Welcome back to the best Bloodborne playthrough you are currently watching. I've been stalling on this for a little too long, but the amazing announcement of Bloodborne 2 recently, from our mighty overlords in Nintendo, gave me more incentive to finish what I started. This next part begins with what is basically a boss rush of the main game's content, before I dive headfirst into the DLC like a moth to a big-tittied sexy flame. The first is Logarius, since I received the cordial invitation to Canehurst not too long ago. He's not much of a challenge at this point, since nearly everything he does can be interrupted for big damage if you know the timing, but he's still a pretty fun fight. Next up are two bosses in the Upper Cathedral. It's a spooky place with lots of jump scares, but the first boss is a gang of little alien dudes having a garden party. I take my pellets, I apply my bolt paper, and I die immediately. I then do it properly, but almost die anyway. It's one of those fights that can be easy to underestimate because it's so straightforward. The other boss, however, was once considered among the hardest fights. I mention this because I killed the boss in less than a minute, because beast blood pellets are still overpowered. Amy G jumps around a lot, but doesn't last much longer either. That's basically it for the side bosses in the main game, except for one, Cleric Beast. You might be asking why I decided to leave one of the earliest bosses in the game for this point, and it was because I wanted to see if I could kill this boss in one hit. The short answer was close, but no cigar. Even when I wasn't messing it up, I could only do about 2/3 of his health bar in one hit, so I decided to go for a compromise, killing him in a cool way with a charged R2. The final hit? Now that's a lot of damage. Now that that's out of the way, I hitch a ride to DLC land. It's Yharnam, but not as we know it. It's now flooded with burlier, nastier, and crazier hunters, along with some other things that are just plain weird. The Yharnam of before at least pretended to not be a completely snooker-loopy place, but the Hunter's Nightmare drops the act entirely. One other thing of note is that there's an old friend of Jura's in this nightmare, who ultimately puts up much more of a fight than his old buddy. With a bit of cheesing and spamming, I put him down and take his prized possession, my very own handheld chain gun. Beautiful. It's not long before I come face to face with the first boss of the DLC, that one horse from that one manga people have read. As a big old beast boss, the same rules of limb damage and pellet abuse still apply, but this is definitely a boss you don't want to take lightly. The fight also does a phase shift into absolute cinema when old Ludwig pulls out his sword and starts swinging magic goo at you. I died to one of the most telegraphed moves he has because of bad positioning and skill issues. However, it only takes the second run to finish the job. To be fair, I have fought this boss several times before, and the muscle memory hasn't gone yet. The next step is to climb all the way up to the tower to meet the fabled Lady Maria, which presents some complications. First, I had to stop two ladies from double-teaming me, not nearly as fun as it sounds, which is best done by taking the double part out of the equation. It also allowed me to showcase the usefulness of the Gatling gun in applying many bullets to the face. After that, I try to figure out how to use a lift without falling through geometry and into the void. I'm eventually successful. The rest of the tower isn't any less weird. People are losing their eyes, their minds, and even their heads. Plips and plops abound, though not everyone's happy about it. This place can be a cluster of mobs and nasty traps, but it's far from the nastiest place in the game. It just takes a while to get through it all because there are so many rooms and things to do, like feeding brain juice to a snorkeling expert. Once I reached the top of the tower, I encountered the living figures. This is generally considered the easiest boss in the DLC, so naturally, as you'd expect, I die immediately. Sure, it's an easy boss in theory, but if you're as careless as me, you'll be taking a lot of damage very quickly. At least I don't die twice to this boss, but it does come pretty close to that. Then, almost immediately after, is the Lady Maria boss fight. This is actually one of my favourite bosses in the whole game, and if you're more familiar with Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring, you might realise that FromSoft quite liked this fight too. They did decide to reuse it in various different iterations in those games, with added gimmicks like 3 health bars or completely bullshit moves. Compared to those copies, I actually like how fair this boss tends to be with its moves, which are both quite telegraphed and nearly all interruptible with gunshots if you're good enough to do it. Still, if you mess up, you're punished quite heavily, and the one thing I do dislike are the dodgy hitboxes in the final phase. She kills me once as I get greedy, but after that I seal the deal like a true gentleman. Going past the tower reveals the true secret all along. Above the sky is actually a huge fishing village, full of creepy curses and murlocs. Some of these murlocs are pretty big, notorious for being one of the most annoying enemies in the game to fight. Indeed, at the bottom of this well, there are 2 of them you need to fight to get Lady Maria's weapon. However, I already did that before, and I'm not even going to use the weapon this time. I don't need to go down the well. I don't need to go down the well. I don't need to... So I go down the well, and wouldn't you know it, there are 2 big murlocs down there. At first, there's just the one until you bring its health down low enough for the other one to join in. At that point, I recommend using a Shaman Bone Blade, chugging a blue elixir, and just watching them swing at each other. This is what I did, and it was going pretty well, until I realised that for about 20 seconds they were just hitting themselves for 0 damage, because my Bone Blade had run out. Keep in mind that you may need to reapply it from time to time, so try not to die doing it. Once one is down, the rest is easy. You might think that was the hardest part of the area. It was not. It was most certainly not. You see, it's been a while since I played this game, and I forgot just how much I really hate the Orphan of Kos fight. If you thought Maria's hitboxes were taking a piss, this boss takes several litres of piss with its swinging placenta. Not only that, but Orphan's recovery frames are surprisingly short, meaning that for many openings you trade 1 blow for an entire health bar to the face if you're not careful. Even when you are careful, you'll just get hit because the hitboxes and tracking are so unpredictable. Sometimes you can run around the boss without any trouble, and other times he will magnetize to you from across the map. Once he gets going, he basically never stops attacking, so going for interrupts is almost mandatory. On top of all of that, the boss is just flinging itself from one side of the arena to the other, making it extremely annoying to even land a hit on the slimy bastard. What's the worst part about it for me is that, despite everything, I actually got close to beating Orphan on the first go. Unfortunately, I had a huge case of the stupid, and decided to roll into the move where Kos's corpse just farts lightning. It was the first of many, many deaths. In total, I died 17 times to the Orphan of Kos. To put that in perspective, none of the other boss fights in this run got anywhere close to 10 deaths. I have fought and beaten this boss about half a dozen times, but it's never easy, and it's never consistent for me. My general advice would be to fish for interrupts in the first phase, since that's the phase with the most predictable moves, or fish for backstabs when you see certain attacks. Do this until you can reach phase 2, where you basically never lock onto Orphan, and fish for even more backstabs. For some reason, Orphan's tracking gets really thrown off if you aren't locked on, which makes some of his more bullshit moves easier to dodge. Beyond that, just get lucky. Seriously, fuck this boss. With that over and done, there are just a few things I have left to do in the DLC before I finish the game. The only relevant one here is the final boss of the DLC, Lawrence. This boss gets a lot of flack for being both a lazy redesign and a terror with its high damage and large hitboxes. I get that, but I've never found this boss to be anywhere near as annoying as the Orphan. Firstly, the guy is still just the cleric beast, but on fire, so you've seen these moves before. It's only in the second phase where he gets some major new tricks up his sleeve by losing his entire bottom half. Even then, his most dangerous move is nullified by locking off and sticking to his side religiously. As is the custom in this playthrough, he kills me once, and then dies the second time. DLC is officially over. I go back to Mensis to finish the job of actually clearing the area. It's just up the stairs and down the road from where I left off before, so it's not long before I reach the final boss of the area. I could go into detail about this boss and how it works, but it was dead in one go and didn't even get to do its main gimmick because I smashed it so hard. Compared to what I just fought in the DLC, it doesn't really hold a candle in difficulty. Wet nurse slain, baby aborted, job well done. However, this is not the real final boss. To get to that point, 2 things must be achieved. 3/3 of an umbilical cord must be consumed, and I must kill Gerben. I've gone from either completely ignoring Gerben to actively griefing him over this playthrough, so it might be a surprise to viewers who've never played this game that he's actually an important character. He offers me a Yharnam Sunrise ending with my death. I offer him a Yharnam Surprise instead. He then laughs, changes his clothes, and stops pretending to be disabled. This is probably my favourite boss in the base game, for many of the reasons I like Maria's. He has a lot of fancy moves that deal lots of damage if you're careless, but all of it is interruptible and can be punished if you dodge or interrupt it properly. He's quick and agile, but not to the point where landing hits on him is a pain in the ass. Instead, it feels like you're actually fighting another hunter, and one that's close to your level of power by this point. It is absolute cinema, and I haven't even mentioned the music or the aesthetics of the fight. He's dead on the second attempt, and the real final boss of the game then emerges. You might be wondering what this floating squid with hands and legs actually is, and I'll provide no context whatsoever. All you really need to know is that they have a gimmick where they stop you from healing, and then take all but one of your hit points away. It sounds very annoying, especially since the squid's another flailing flapper, but it's not as bad as it sounds since you get plenty of time to regain it all back. You're more likely to die from being careless, as ever, which is of course what happens to me the first time. It also happens the next time, actually, in a stunning display of overconfidence and greed. Third time's the charmer. I win, and then I turn into a squid baby. Roll credits, game over. Or is it? Well, no, because there's still one boss I haven't killed with the state driver yet. Father Gascoigne. He's the boss I needed to kill before I got the weapon, so now I need to go back and finish the job in New Game Plus. I dress up in my Sunday best, and bring out the Gatling gun. If I'm ending this here, I'm doing it in style, dammit. The fight's still basically the same, except that we both deal more damage and I have a lot more tools. He got closer to killing me than I'd like, but I was still able to poke him to death in one go. Gas Can version 2 is no more, and with that, the playthrough is over. So with all that done, there are two questions left to answer. Firstly, has my opinion about the state driver changed? While I admit I had fun trying to charge fist people with the pokey end, many of my criticisms of this weapon remain true. It's very short, often too slow, and everything it does is done better by another weapon. Still, I did have fun with it, and its drawbacks actually made things more interesting for me than just stomping the game with a weapon that basically has no drawbacks. Secondly, do I think Bloodborne holds up as a good game after 10 years? Absolutely. Especially with the DLC, the amount of unique content you get in this game is superb, and its combat system is still fun and engaging to this day. My criticism of many modern games these days, even Elden Ring, is that they spread themselves too thin with lots of open areas and things to collect, but none of it is interesting, or there are just too many reused assets or set pieces. Bloodborne doesn't have that problem, which kept things interesting for me, even as I reached the end game. If you ever get the chance to play it, I still recommend playing it now. That's it from me, though. And that's it from Decadus. Thanks for watching.